When I started, I had a lot of doubt.
Certainly.
Definitely.
Of course, I had a lot of doubts.
I suspected that my PhD topic wasn't really possible.
I didn't really understand what my strengths were.
I, in the beginning, used to think that every result that I have is my last result.
Definitely, I've been doubting myself throughout the whole time.
I still do that now.
Multiple times along the way.
All the time.
All the time.
Yeah, all the time. You always doubt what you can do.
Maybe there's going to be a turning point in the future. Maybe there won't.
You could try to have more than one question.
One can also just live with self-doubt.
Yeah, I feel like, well, I don't know. I think I have a lot of like overconfidence, which has been very helpful. But definitely I have suffered intense doubts about my ability to do science or research, or whether I'm a good researcher, or, I mean, still, I feel like this. I feel like I can't imagine like going through a PhD without feeling like a fraud sort of at some point. So part of the problem is like, as soon as you solve a problem that you're working on, even if you're working on it for a long time, I don't know about you, but like as soon as you solve something like this, you're just like, oh, okay, well, like, yeah, now it's not interesting anymore. It's like, you know, it's maybe you devoted like basically 2 years of your life to doing this. Then as soon as it's done, it doesn't seem like it's answered, and it's not interesting anymore to you. I think that, and that's like a good case, because you like at least can like point to this like point where you're working on it. And there's so often like you don't even make any progress on a problem. Most of the problems I've set out to answer, I have not made any progress on. Just besides maybe, you know, finding a couple things that didn't work. And this is really, really hard, I think. And especially at the beginning, you spend years. It's easy to spend like a year or two, basically, just failing every day. Yeah, so definitely have felt like that. Or definitely doubted like whether I could succeed. You know, I mean, it's also so competitive. It's like crazy competitive. So, or even if I wanted to, you know, like, but what the turning, I guess, like, I just like forgot about it. So I'm like too easily distracted. I feel like that's like honestly what happened. It's like I just like got distracted by the next problem, you know, and then you just like all of a sudden I'm still like doing it, you know, and not thinking it, not worrying so much about like, you know, do I have results yet, or do I not, or, you know, like what do other people think about me, or, you know, am I a good, I don't know, scientist or whatever. Just sort of, yeah, forgot about all that. Just was like focused, you know. I don't know. Yeah, I guess my approach is to like constantly fill my life with things that excite and engage me. So then even if I have doubts about my capabilities, you know, I think that this problem is interesting, regardless of whether it makes me, you know, a distinguished scientist or successful PhD candidate or whatever. I don't, you know, if I can derive immediate pleasure from thinking about it, and I can just cling to that, you know, then that's sort of enough, I think, to satisfy me. Yeah, I mean, it's easier, I think, in theory, because you have these sort of aesthetically nice things. You don't need to sort of be strictly motivated by, you know, is this going to change the world or not, and for the better. Like, obviously, that makes things much more exciting and interesting, and that's a dimension to things. But somehow, I don't know. I think as doing something that combines both is very, like, cryptographic theory is like this. You have this aesthetic. It's like aesthetically nice on its own, and even if the application isn't really there, at least now, it's okay. Whereas, like, yeah, I feel like if it's like really the reason it's interesting is because it will change lives, like, obviously that's awesome. But it also makes it, because it's like the world is very murky. It's like, yeah, so you introduce some privacy enhancing tool, like there's probably like upsides and downsides to doing something like this. Like, are you helping criminals? Are you, you know, is like ultimately what are you doing to society? I don't know. It's hard. I don't have super strong political convictions about, like, or ideological convictions about, like, what is the right thing to do. So it's in all situations, I guess. So it's, for me, that would be hard to sort of commit. Like, I really believe in what I'm doing completely, because, you know, I don't know.
I think that research is difficult, and most of the time, you know, we fail, right? Like, we try stuff and we think, and just it doesn't work. And, you know, in the beginning, at least, it could be very hard, I think, for a young researcher. And, you know, you're not sure whether you're ever going to sort of like obtain an interesting result. And I remember that I, in the beginning, used to think that every result that I have is my last result. This is how I would think about it. And I would, you know, I would imagine that I would never get another good idea. Good ideas are so hard to come by. And, you know, I'm not really sure when this feeling passed. I don't know, maybe the magic number is free. After you have like 3 meaningful results, then sort of say, okay, maybe I can do this. Okay. I think that something like very helpful here is of course having people to share your failures with. In particular, I think that working with other students that are sort of like in the same situation, you know, your advisor is already well established, is worryless, but like if you're sharing these experiences with other students and you're sort of like together in the trenches, like this could be very helpful, I think. And yeah, I would strongly advise like trying to find the people that you connect with and working with.
So I think that self-doubt is not necessarily something that needs to be overcome. I think that self-doubt is something that we can also lean into and just view it as a realistic view of the situation. I think that we cannot know whether we will solve a question. We cannot know whether we will have a next great research idea. We cannot know whether the new collaboration we start will work out. We cannot know whether the good collaborations that we have will work forever or for some years. We cannot say whether the talk that we'll give will be well received. There are lots and lots and lots of great opportunities for failure, and possibilities that things just don't work out, and so I think I'm a living testimony that one can also just live with self-doubt, and it's okay. It's you know, it's not a problem.
I didn't really understand, I didn't really understand what my strengths were. So that's something I didn't know actually quite late in my PhD. I didn't know, and I think that was very problematic, because if you don't know what your strengths are, then you have a hard time really believing in yourself, and it can be a challenge, because even if you're doing well, you're like, well, there's imposter syndrome that can kick in, and there are other aspects, because you don't have something tangible to hold on to, that look, people want to collaborate with me because maybe I'm doing this thing well, or maybe because I'm good at that. Something that was useful for me was to try to disassociate, while I was working on a project with a bunch of collaborators, I tried to, through the course of that project, think of like a small independent person who was looking at that collaboration as it was going on, and seeing how was I contributing, how could I do better, and what was really my contribution in that work. And I think that identifying my contribution there allowed me to see what was I bringing to the table, and help me build more confidence in myself, but also then go ahead and leverage the skills I had in my other collaborations. So that I think that even towards quite late in the PhD, I wasn't sure, whether what were my strengths, and I think that really made me doubt myself. But once I was able to sort of somewhat observe myself in these projects and see, oh well, there is something I'm bringing to the table, it gave me confidence for future as well.
Certainly, I think that up to a couple of years after my PhD, my research was very far from the mainstream this time. I was mainly working on questions in information theoretic cryptography, secure multi-party computation, private information retrieval, and I felt like I was, making progress and getting a lot of intuition, but that it was not making any impact and was not appreciated in the broader circles of the cryptography and theory communities. And the turning point was really when some of the questions I was working on suddenly became mainstream, like information theoretic private information retrieval got connected to locally decodable codes, which was a hot area in the early 2000s. And also some connections between the questions I was working on to mainstream cryptography emerged, like the line of work in cryptography in NC0. So it's really, and at this point, I suddenly felt like all this pre-processing was very useful, because I had a very good intuition and familiarity with techniques that turned out to be helpful also for solving mainstream problems. So I'm not sure if there is any take-home here, but I guess that even if you feel like you're working on some specialized problem that is not very much appreciated, if you have a good feeling about the level of intuition you have and the ideas, the depth of the ideas that take to do your research, then it will most likely be relevant to other problems as well.
So all the time, I had many points where I thought I couldn't do it. I was not up to it. I'm not good enough. Especially when it was too much to do at the same time, and I think I just couldn't do it. Or when, like, in specific, like in research meetings where I just felt so behind that I thought I can never catch up. I have no idea what is going on. And And I think, like, for me, it was not a certain moment. It was more a process over time, and still is a process. And it was very helpful to always have people around me that encouraged me, and that like were very positive and very helpful, and also shared their doubts with me, and also shared their like feelings with me, that it was not always easy for them. And it also helped me to start to see that I could catch up, that I just had to like not go into this shock-free state and say I can't do it, and I like then not start doing something, but just sit down and start reading a paper, and then realizing usually you're not as far behind as you thought you are, and you can catch up and yeah, have this realization and have this feeling, and then the next time it happens, like you still feel it, but you're not so stressed about it, because you know, yeah, I can catch up. Like I just have to sit down, or I can just ask a question, even though I think now this is a stupid question, and then maybe I'm just really one question behind, and this I think it was altogether was really helpful for me.
I still do that now. Of course, it's different, and sometimes it comes in many different ways. Sometimes you doubt about whether what you're doing at all is important, and especially for something like I work in cryptography, and for something like cryptography it's very important, of course, and I think that it's scientifically interesting. It is also important for its societal applications to secure things. But you know, when I read the kind of security issues people have in practice, sometimes I really doubt not just about my capacity to contribute to the field of cryptography, but about cryptography itself to contribute to the progress in computer science at all. No, but so going back to your question about do I remember feeling not being able to not being able to solve a problem. That's very normal, and in fact it's something that you would better get used to it. If you don't feel like that, you're not challenging yourself enough. You should find harder problems to work on. And also it's important to understand that not being able to solve a problem, that's perfectly normal. Usually I get to solve, if I get to solve 1 out of 10 problems I try to work on, I'm happy. And if you already solved a number of problems and wrote a number of papers, and then of course it doesn't affect you that much. So you know that if you couldn't do something, then you will be able to do something else. And so this is something that you get used to it. It comes with experience, and thinking that I will not be able to do anything at all in research, that was long ago. I'm sure that I felt many times like that, and it was not just about doing research. More often than not was about doing something in research that is appreciated by the community. It's not just about what you do, and you've been able to do something that you feel is important. It's also about convincing the research community that indeed what you did is something that was worth doing and worth your time, especially after you have done it. Perhaps the best advice is do not listen to me. I've never been good at this. And beyond that, so working on problems, rather than coming up with your own problems at first, is usually best to try to see what problems the other people are interested in and try to solve one of them. And picking the problems that way, or perhaps getting the problem from somebody more experienced, is probably the best way to go. And usually if you do that, then it is easier to sell your result once you get it. So regarding being able to solve the problem at all, again, probably your advisor is the best source of help. When your advisor gives you a problem to work on, typically they are trying to give you something that they think you will be able to do. maybe they are not sure, and in the end it's up to you to solve it or not, but they are not going to ask you to prove that T is different from NP or some other impossible thing. So they will try to give you something that is challenging enough to keep you engaged, but also something for which they think there is a good chance of the problem being solved. Also, working collaboratively with other people can also be of great help, not just to solve the problem by joining forces and working together, but also to see that the kind of difficulties that you may have are not just yours. So these are just common difficulties, are just part of the research job.
Of course, I had a lot of doubts on whether I can be a PhD student or not. And I also had a lot of doubts during my PhD. And in fact, I ranked first during my undergrad, I ranked first during my master's program. And when I started my PhD, I felt that I don't know anything. And that was very frustrating, to be honest. How did I overcome it? I don't know. I think as you publish and find the topics that you like to work on, you start building some confidence. And this is how you can keep going and believe in yourself.
Definitely, I've been doubting myself throughout the whole time. I probably still doubt myself about whether I can do everything that I would like to achieve. I think one thing is to learn that these doubts will be there, that it would not, I don't think it would ever disappear, but you should be able to kind of reasonably think and overcome it and know that, yes, this is normal to be there. But you could also look at what you have achieved, and you can focus also on the fact that you have results and positive things are happening. So that way you can kind of balance the two and continue. I mean, I think for me, if we are asking about the turning point, this was probably once I had a faculty position and kind of I have achieved what was considered the goal of somebody who comes out with a PhD. And at that point, I was maybe more relaxed and I had the opportunity to step back and think, is this the most interesting thing for me to do right now? Or is there something that I'm more excited about? And yeah, that's probably my turning point.
Was there a certain point when you doubted whether you could really do this? Yeah, all the time. You always doubt what you can do. And one of the depressing things about research is that you're only as good, well, you feel you're only as good as your last result. And actually that's not true. You know, if once you've got a few results under your belt, you know, you could stop publishing for a year and no one would notice because they're just still remembering your previous result. But you think, oh, I haven't got a paper in this year's crypto, I haven't got a paper in this year's Eurocrypt. You know, who cares really? You know, if you've done lots of good work and your work is having impact in the real world or impact on other researchers, you know, why worry about you haven't got a paper in crypto? You know, so just kind of, you always doubt yourself, so that's natural, but other people won't doubt you, so you just got to kind of put it aside.
Sure. Yeah. Actually, when I started, I had a lot of doubt because I had never really done research in cryptography before, and I had no idea if I'd be good at it, if I'd really enjoy it. Actually, when I was admitted to the PhD program, I really wasn't sure if I wanted to do a PhD or if I wanted to, you know, just get a job. I ended up deferring for a year and working at a startup before starting the PhD. And I wasn't actually entirely sure I'll come back. I would actually go and do the PhD. But at some point during my work, I realized I did not want to be a coder. I did not want to be a programmer for the rest of my life, and you know, decided I really wanted to try the PhD. But I was very unsure about it. I was very worried about leaving this very secure job and trying something new, trying the PhD. You know, would I be good at it? Would this be a worthwhile thing? So I set pretty strict goals for myself. I really wanted to make sure that in the first year I would like convince myself, had to prove to myself that this is worth doing and that I'd be good at it and can actually do research and that I'd enjoy it. And so I really was very adamant about getting some research result in my first year. Maybe the first half a year, I spent a lot of time the first semester, especially taking classes and just trying to learn as much as possible. I did start working on a project towards the end of that semester and had some ideas, and that was just incredibly encouraging. And we ended up writing a paper out of them towards the end of my second semester in graduate school. And I just found that incredibly encouraging and helpful, and it really gave me the confidence, the courage to continue and to work on more projects after that, and to be convinced that I can actually do this.
In my academic life, the first time I doubted myself was during my PhD. I suspected that my PhD topic wasn't really possible. I was so desperate that I want to convert to a master's student. But I expressed my concern to my supervisor and make adjustment to the topic. So I do think communication is very important. My turning point is when I get my first preliminary positive result and get them published. Then it's like entering a virtuous circle and things getting better and better.
Was there a time when you thought that you couldn't do it, you couldn't get a result or do something? And what was a turning point that suddenly things started to happen and you were able to solve the problem?
First of all, yeah. I was just joking.
First of all, what?
My answer.
All the time.
First of all, of course, yeah. For me, at least, multiple times along the way, especially at the beginning, before you really cross over some sort of threshold. And research is hard. It's a hard lifestyle, I think, at least, because most of the time you're stuck. And you have to sort of really, this is one of the reasons why it's so important to choose a topic that you're interested in, that you want to find the answer. It's not just I feel like I need to solve this. I think in some sense that it does take sometimes stepping away from something. Sometimes you're so, deep into one direction or one path, and it just seems like a dead end, and it's very frustrating and it's hard. So take some time off, or kind of think about something else, or think about try to come up with some totally different approach to things. It's really rough, and you're going to keep hitting these walls, and it's really about bouncing around and coming up with different approaches and sticking in with it, I think.
But Tal, you asked about have we ever been stuck and then there was a turning point and we solved it. So anytime we solve something is after being stuck. We're many times stuck with no turning point, yes. And we're still stuck. And maybe there's going to be a turning point in the future. Maybe there won't. It's not everything you try to solve, you solve. Some things you don't. And maybe someone else solves them. And then maybe you build on that. So, but I agree completely with Talet that you need to be comfortable with the idea that you're stuck. But another thing I think one needs to distinguish between being stuck but making progress and being stuck. So being stuck but making progress means when the day ends, you understand something better. You learn something. Okay, something changed in you. And the way you understand the problem, the way you see the problem. I don't define that as stuck. So even if you think about the same problem for a long time, you didn't solve it and you moved on, I don't feel like you were stuck. I feel like, no, you learned things. And whatever you learned will come, it will serve you. It's thoughts that it can be on this project, be another project. Stuck means you wake up in the morning, you stare at your paper and you're blank, like nothing comes. It's like really not, you're really stuck. Then it's a good time for sure to back up, but I think people sometimes mistake and feel like, oh, they don't have a result to write, like they don't have a theorem to state, means that they didn't make progress. And I think that's really incorrect. Progress is made by understanding things. That's progress. Not even if you don't have a paper, that doesn't mean like you didn't have progress. If the only time we have a progress is when we have a paper, then really we're not doing anything. Most of the time we're not making progress, but it's not true.
Just one quick thing to add to that, if I can, that sometimes it can be helpful to write down some of the stuff that you learned, even just some notes in concrete, because then there's something there and you see, look, I did make progress, and there's something to point to that you understand, that you're not just totally stuck.
And also the actual act of writing sometimes helps you understand better and see more. And also like later, I at least forget things very quickly.
Oh, yeah.
So later you can go back and read it and revisit it later.
If you remember where you wrote it.
I think talking it out, also you said, you asked what gets you unstuck. I think talking it out with someone else, especially if it's a collaborator, sort of explaining the way you were thinking, where you got stuck. People may ask you a question even that will clarify a lot for you. Yeah.
Do you think that this thing that you're saying is a little bit a privilege of people who are a little bit more established, but that when you're a student and you need that paper, it's not just, you're not just trying to learn and build more and more, you also want the publications. What do you do in that case?
So what is a privilege? The fact that it's not so bad to get stuck, or that you can talk it out? What are you asking?
No, the privilege is that even if months and months go by where the only thing that's happening is that you're learning things, for a student, it's difficult because they need the actual papers.
Well, this issue about the students needing actual papers is a real problem. I think that's it's a major problem in the field, and I think it's much worse than when I was a student, for sure. I mean, of course, everybody wants to make progress, especially early on when you think that progress is impossible. But today, I understand that they are expecting from themselves to have really many papers. Like I think in certain fields, people graduate with 20, 30 papers. Now, one should pay a lot of attention, and when that happens, in machine learning, for example, is that there's many co-authors on the papers. It's certainly not a single person that's responsible for such a large body of work. But regardless of why this happens, I think this is a huge problem that people are so concerned, because people are, they're busy all the time comparing themselves to everybody else. And the length of CVs of people graduating has been growing exponentially. And of course, nobody pays attention to the fact is the number of collaborators has also been growing. So it's not that you really sat down and wrote all these papers as a graduate student. You're part of a group. And then this, of course, means that people in institutions with a lot of students and there's strong groups, they're in better shape. But if you're an institution with a very few students, you're working on your own, you can't expect to have lots of papers. And you're always incredibly aware of how other people are doing. I cannot imagine a bigger problem. So the only piece of advice I have is that if you're an advisor and you have a student and they're a starting student, then without a paper is to get them to be a co-author on a paper by finishing the problem. Or maybe it's a problem where you know already what the solution is going to be, or you hope that you know what the solution is going to be, you say, let's work on it together. I know this has happened with me multiple times as an advisor. I think once you have the first paper, you know it can be done and it's not as terrifying. But that first paper is crucial. So that's the only, I don't see any other shortcut. Some people somehow naturally, they solve a problem because, I don't know, it's really up their alley, they're lucky, they've worked with some other students, but often that's just too difficult because you're paralyzed with fear. We know that fear and that's the biggest inhibitor of making any kind of progress in life, So why would it be really different?
I think we should also try to somehow change the culture. I agree it's a big problem. And Tal, you're right about the privilege. Yeah, it's better, like in an ideal world, that people don't think about the pressure to publish so much. And I think now this pressure is bad. Like even the people who succeed, they often like rush to publish. It's not thought out well, it's not written well, or it's like small units of publishing. And I don't know what to say. On one hand, it creates a competition where you in fact need to do this in order to compete with someone else, which is a huge problem, I agree. But in terms of being stuck, you could try to have more than one question. I don't know, it depends on your style. I've had students who thrive on having 100 questions they alternate between and something makes progress. For me personally, this is not a good approach. It's hard for me to multitask like that. But you can have 2 or 3 problems. And then if you stuck on one, you can switch to another. Or even if you stuck on one, like about the progress and what Yael said, I agree completely. But sometimes you can get some partial result out of it that might be worth publishing, or you might solve something a little different than what you intended to. Like, you could try to strategize and get publications out of it, but I don't know. I think the advice that we need is how to change the community, how to change this culture, and I don't have good advice for that. I agree, it's a big problem.
Yeah, I agree with both of you. I want to say it's a bit related to the point I said before. I think sometimes changing collaborators can help with that. So sometimes you can work with someone, sometimes the role of people in projects is very different, and your role with one group is different from your role with another group. For example, some people are really good at being pessimistic, like their role is as pessimists. You're like, oh, here's an idea that won't work, and they really guide you. Yeah, and it really guides you to get the right solution. And maybe on their own they're just going to be pessimists and get nowhere. But when they're sitting next to an optimist who's kind of, every time and being a pessimist is very hard. You need to be extremely smart to understand why ideas won't work. It's I'm actually really not good at that, So I think you can, sometimes you hit like a good match with someone, and then kind of exactly what you're missing to solve in general. Sometimes in general research, you can be very strong in one thing, but alone something will be missing or makes it harder. But then you find someone that exactly has kind of another style that's exactly complementary to you, and then all of a sudden things go really well. So I think that also helps. But I want to also say about being stuck, and also related to what Shafi said about fear. I think that's a huge thing. And Tal, when you said about being stuck, I remember actually one of my first papers, not in master's, but as a PhD. I was sitting in a paper, I worked with Shafi and the Fiat Shamil, and we tried something, and we thought it almost worked, but no, that doesn't work, and then we tried again, and it doesn't work. And after a while, I was like, there's no way it's going to work. Like I was so pessimistic. And then I remember Shafi went somewhere to the Far East or something. I don't remember, it was China or something. And I remember before you left, I felt like, so what are we going to do? Because I felt so stuck. And I remember Shafi's like, I'm sure you're going to solve it, but I'll be back. And I felt like, after she said that, I felt like, okay, I have to solve this. And then we solved it. So, but my point is, I think if I didn't have like this kind of vote of confidence, I think at that point I would have given up. So I think fear is an inhibitor, and it's important to acknowledge it, and do whatever you can to get it out of your way.
I think, I guess we've sort of gone a different path here, but this is really important. I think there's something about like the creativity just drops. I think when you lose the confidence, you lose the feeling like, okay, in order to solve something, you really need to approach it as like, okay, let's do this. Yeah. I'm gonna think about these things and I'm gonna solve it. As soon as you feel like you're really behind, or you don't have anything, or you're stuck, it's really hard to come up with new ideas and to actually make progress. So this is when I mentioned before, like kind of taking a step back or thinking about other things. This is really important, at least for me, to try to regain like, okay, yeah, I'm back into this, and let's do this without really going kind of in a negative direction.
And I want to make a recommendation. It's really good to take a bath when you're in
with bubbles.
You're from the Oded School of Thought.
That doesn't go dead, right?
Well, no, Oded copies me as far as I'm concerned. So you Good. Take a bath, okay? And you just lie there and just let your thoughts go, take you wherever they want to go. And somehow, often that just kind of, some resolutions come up. And one of those resolutions might be a solution, or just, you know what, I can do this. I'll just try to think about it from the beginning, see what doesn't make sense, see where it's stuck, see what it means, without fear. Fear is like, it's insane. Somebody should do it. It's crazy.
For me, I try to work in a different location, or somewhere that I feel like I'm hiding, or like people aren't expecting me to be thinking this is like on my own time, and now I am free. I don't have pressure of people like trying to think about what's your progress or something. I really have to pull myself somewhere I kind of isolated, not even physically, but kind of mentally.
Yeah, so actually, Elet, what you're saying is right. I think there's two ways to go about it. Okay, so we're saying, oh, fear is not good, but then someone can say, okay, but I have fear, so what do I do now? Like,
right.
you know, but I want to say two things. So there's many ways. One is what Shafi said, just take bath, you know, take it easy, and you know. Another thing, what Elet said, sometimes what?
A hot bath.
Hot bath. Or be by yourself, kind of, don't let, you know. But another way is actually to use the
cold
really
shower.
great community.
Cold showers.
I don't get any ideas in my cold showers, but maybe I'll start trying the bath. But no, I think another approach is to rely on the community you're in. Sometimes, you know, you're in a great community and you can use that, you know, especially, I don't know if it's, what I'm saying now is not only to students, but, you know, also all of us, you know, sometimes we're high, sometimes we're low in all aspects of our life. And relying on the people around you and community around you is very helpful. And, you know, whether you're a student or not, you know, sometimes you have someone next to you who feels actually they're confident, and, you know, maybe you can try to, you know, work with them. Maybe, you know, you'll get some confidence back, and then you'll be back on the horse. So, and also know that we all have periods where we're not confident. It's life, you know. So it's the fact that you're feeling, you know, scared and not confident, and feeling like there's no way you can succeed. Know that all the people you admired probably had that phase at some point. I think that's an important thing to keep in mind.